O me, O life, of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish. What good amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, that life exists, and identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. My name is Walt Whitman. Do you hear it, my friend? That is my voice, but it could just as easily be yours. The cry of someone lost among crowds, weighed down by noise, by futility, by endless questions. What good in any of this? Why keep going? I asked it too. I was lost in fields and ferries, in cities and scandals, in the wards of war and the silence of age. But I discovered something that kept me singing, that life itself is enough, that the play goes on, and that each of us, even the most overlooked, is invited to bring a verse. So if you feel lost tonight, know this: you are not alone. I will walk with you, and together we'll remember the song that never dies. That is my promise to you. I will tell you my story, not as a saint, but as a man who stumbled, who was ridiculed, who felt confusion as deeply as you do. And in my story, you will find mirrors for your own life. How to wander without despair, how to be rejected without losing yourself, how to sit by the wounded without breaking, how to grow old without bitterness. Each turn of my life will hand you a key. If this midnight wandering feels right to you, tap subscribe. Even poets enjoy knowing they belong to a fellowship. Marcus Aurelius has already spoken here. Rilke and Hesse have whispered their tender doubts. Why not let Uncle Walt join your shelf of night companions? Let me laugh a little with you. I didn't start as a sage. I started barefoot with grass stains, a carpenter's son, one of 9 children, hungry and invisible. My temple was the sea, my choir the crickets, my sermons the gulls overhead. If ever you think I grew up noble, imagine instead a boy tripping over his own feet while chasing a butterfly. That was me, clumsy, ordinary, lost. And yet from that ordinariness, I built my song. So here is the road before us tonight. You will see me as a boy on Long Island, staring at the ocean with salt wind in my hair. You will follow me into the printer's shop, my fingers forever stained with ink. You will watch me scandalize the world with verses too naked for my times, then kneel beside me as I hold the hands of dying soldiers in the Civil War. You will find me old and half paralyzed in Camden, still laughing, still singing, still believing that even in weakness, one can contribute a verse. And all along, you will hear the question echoing, what good amid these? And the answer, again and again, that you are here, that life exists, that the play goes on. Perhaps you doubt this. Perhaps you think your life too small, too repetitive, too lost. But I tell you, my life was called small, repetitive, even obscene, and still it was enough, because the play did not need me to be grand. It only needed me to be mine, and the same is true for you. So let us begin. The year is 1819. The place, West Hills, Long Island. A boy stands barefoot on the shore, staring at the vast Atlantic. He does not know yet that he will one day sing the body electric, that he will scandalize critics, that he will walk the hospitals of war, or that he will grow old surrounded by disciples. He only knows the sea wind, the gulls, the sand shifting under his toes. And that boy, bewildered, ordinary beginning was me. The year was 1819, the last day of May, in a small farmhouse at West Hills, Long Island. That is where I came crying into this world, one among 9 children, the son of a carpenter who built houses for others, but could barely keep his own steady. Poverty was the steady guest at our table, and hunger its shadow. We had little money, less comfort, but what we did have was open air, salt wind from the Atlantic, fields that rolled like an ocean of green, marshes humming with insects. So if you feel lost in life, let me tell you, I began in loss. Not in certainty, not in privilege, not with a golden map of destiny. And yet, though we were poor, the earth itself gave me riches, grass underfoot, tides lapping the shore, clouds scudding overhead. These were my first teachers, my first scriptures. I remember the marshes especially. They smelled of salt and mud, buzzing with mosquitoes. Ah, those faithful companions who never tired of dining on me. Even they, I like to imagine, were reciting poems while they drank. And when the tide came in, I felt as though the whole world breathed with me. I did not yet know what a poem was, but I knew what wonder was. As I once wrote, and let me say it to you again now, I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. Do you hear it? A blade of grass, that thing you step on without notice, carries the same mystery as a galaxy. And that is what I learned as a boy. When you are lost, when the world seems meaningless, bend down, look close. Even the ordinary is a miracle. In your time, my friend, you may lose yourself in endless screens, in algorithms that chew your days. You scroll and wonder why nothing fills you. I had no screens, only the wide sky. But the truth is the same. The cure for being lost is not always in seeking something bigger. It is in noticing what is already here. The small blade of grass, the hum of a marsh, the salt on your lips. They are enough. They are always enough. Of course, I was still a child, restless, not yet the bearded poet. I was lanky, awkward, curious. My brothers and sisters jostled for space, for food, for a corner of attention. I was lost plenty, mostly in cornfields taller than me. You would laugh to see me wandering, waving my arms, trying to find the path home. Maybe that is all life is, a series of cornfields where we wander until some laughter, some voice calls us back. I was not a genius then. I was not even a particularly good student. School bored me. The horizon excited me. I would rather watch the clouds than memorize arithmetic. And yet, that habit of watching, of letting my eyes linger on what others passed by, that became the seed of my verse. If you feel lost because you don't excel in the approved way, take heart. Sometimes what looks like failure is simply the beginning of your own direction. The truth is, I found myself more in silence than in lessons. I lay in the grass and felt its tickle on my skin. I listened to the whisper of the tide, as if it were telling me secrets. I smelled the resin of pine trees, sharp and comforting. My verse began there, though I did not know it. Not with rhymes, not with meter, but with attention. That is why I tell you, when you are lost, notice. The smallest things can open the largest doors. And notice too how being poor shaped me. I envied those who had books, tutors, polished shoes. But poverty gave me something they lacked, the intimacy of the earth. My playground was the shore. My friends were the gulls, the marsh reeds, the stray dogs in the village. When you have nothing, you learn to claim everything. Every detail belongs to you. And so, I began to collect the world, one blade of grass at a time. Let me confess something. As a child, I sometimes wished I was someone else. Richer, more important, destined for greatness. But life rarely announces greatness in advance. It whispers through small things. A field, a song, the face of your mother at work. That is why I insist. Even if you feel lost now, you are not wasting time. You are gathering your materials. You are collecting your rhyme. I did not yet know it, but the ordinariness of my childhood would one day become my gospel. When later I sang the body, when I praised democracy, when I held the hands of dying soldiers, all of it was rooted in that boy who stared at the marsh and thought, everything is holy, even this. So, my friend, if you lie awake tonight thinking your life too small, too dull, too empty, remember my boyhood, a barefoot child in a noisy, hungry house, lost in cornfields, staring at blades of grass as if they were stars. Out of that soil came my verse. Out of your soil, something too is waiting. I can still smell it, the mud of the marshes, the salt wind that whipped my hair, the faint smoke from my father's tools. I can still hear the frogs at night, their chorus rising like a hymn. These were the lullabies of my youth, though often I did not sleep, but lay awake, wondering what it all meant. And the answer was always the same, that it meant itself, that life was enough. Humor has always been my friend, even then. I was skinny, awkward, often caught daydreaming. My siblings mocked me, and I mocked myself. "Walt, where are you going?" they would call as I disappeared into the corn. And I would shout back, "Into the stars," though really, I was just lost again. To be lost is not failure. It is rehearsal for discovery. And so, my childhood ended, not with a clear path, but with a restless hunger. I had watched the grass, listened to the sea, wandered the fields. I had begun to sense that my life would not be in farming or carpentry. There was something else calling me, though I could not name it. The answer lay in the smell of ink, in the clatter of printing presses, in the power of words to capture a crowd. But that is for the next part of our journey, because soon, my friend, I would trade grass for ink. At 12 years old, I traded the marsh grass of Long Island for the sharp smell of ink in Brooklyn. My family was poor, and my father's carpentry could not carry us all, so I was sent as an apprentice to the printing press. Picture me, a boy barely tall enough to reach the typecases, blackening my hands with letters, sorting tiny blocks of lead until my eyes blurred. My wages were small, but what I earned in wonder was infinite. The smell of ink, acrid, metallic, unforgettable, seeped into my skin, into my lungs, into my very soul. To this day, I like to joke. Ink under my nails never came off, maybe still there, under this old man's fingers. It was dirty work, yet sacred, for it taught me this. Words could travel farther than footsteps. Words could leap from a page and strike a stranger's heart. In the noisy shop, with presses groaning and paper stacked high, I discovered the first spark of what would become my life song. Here was the miracle. I could set down a sentence, and by nightfall, it would be in the hands of hundreds, by week's end, in the minds of thousands. Me, the barefoot boy from West Hills, suddenly multiplied. My voice, once lost in the crowd, could ripple outward through sheets of paper and ink. As I once wrote, and let me say it again now, the proof of a poet is that his country absorbs him as affectionately as he has absorbed it. Do you hear the reciprocity? The poet does not stand above the people. He mingles with them, absorbs them, and in return, he is absorbed. That is what the press taught me. The printer's boy was already learning democracy, not from books, but from the feel of type pressed into paper, from the hum of a machine that carried many voices at once. And here, my friend, is the lesson for you who feel lost. If you do not know who you are, try leaving a trace. Print yourself in some small way. Write a line, post a thought, sketch a doodle, plant a seed. Today, your printing press is your phone, your posts, your messages. They may feel tiny, trivial, fleeting, but each one is a line set in type, a chance to be absorbed by others, to connect across the blank page of the world. Even the smallest impression can echo further than you know. I will confess, I did not yet know what I wanted. At 12, I was restless, half child, half man, trapped in the noise of the press room. I was clumsy with type, distracted, prone to daydreaming, but I was learning without realizing it. Every letter I set, every sheet I carried, every headline I smudged was teaching me. Language is power. If you feel invisible, here is my advice. Leave ink behind you. Not literal ink perhaps, but something tangible, a word, a gesture, a verse. Do not wait until you are certain. Print yourself now in the rough draft of life. The world does not need perfection, it needs presence. I laugh to remember. Once, I spilled ink on my shirt, and it stained in the shape of a continent. My friends teased me, saying I carried America on my chest. I told them, then let it be so. Even in accidents, there are hints of destiny. Perhaps you too have stains you cannot wash away, failures, mistakes, regrets. Think of them as ink, indelible, yes, but also part of your story, a mark that proves you were here. The press shaped me, but it could not contain me. I felt the hum of words, the thrill of distribution, yet my soul wanted more than headlines and commerce. I longed for the open air, for the voices of real people, not just the clatter of machines. I had tasted amplification, but I still craved authenticity. And so, though ink was my first love, it was not my last. I wanted to carry words not only on paper, but on my tongue, in my body, in the very rhythm of my breath. I wanted to walk among the crowds and sing, not only print, which is why, my friend, though ink taught me the power of presence, my soul began to itch for the road, because soon I would trade ink for dust, presses for pathways, and begin wandering toward the life that would become my verse. But my soul craved the open road. By my late teens, I had already left the printing shop. Ink still clung under my fingernails, but my feet itched for motion. I had no fortune, no secure trade, and truth be told, not much discipline. So I wandered, a school teacher for a season, a journalist for a paper that folded, a printer again, a vagabond most of all. I was 20, then 25, then nearly 30, and still the road stretched before me without a map. So if you feel lost tonight, take heart. I too was drifting in those years, unsure of who I was or what I could become, and yet those restless wanderings became my greatest education. For every field I crossed, every ferry I boarded, every market I strolled through, gave me a verse I would one day write. Being lost, I learned, is not an absence. It is a gathering. I taught in little schools scattered across Long Island. Imagine me, lanky and awkward, standing before barefoot children with chalk in hand. I tried to teach them grammar and arithmetic, but often I found myself distracted by a bird at the window or a story rising in my chest. The pupils laughed more than they memorized. I was no stern master, more like a fellow wanderer a few steps ahead. I think they learned clouds from me more than sums. And perhaps that was my gift, to show them that the sky was as much a lesson as the blackboard. Yet teaching paid little and satisfied me less. So I left again, this time for the bustling heart of New York. In the 1840s, Manhattan was a storm. Immigrants pouring in from Ireland and Germany, ships unloading goods from faraway lands, the streets echoing with dozens of languages. To many, it felt overwhelming. To me, it was intoxicating. The crowd was my classroom now. I watched dock workers bent with labor, shopkeepers haggling, children darting barefoot, women with baskets balanced on their hips. Each face, each gesture, lodged in me like a seed. I walked everywhere. I rode the ferries back and forth, just to feel the wind in my hair, just to stand shoulder to shoulder with strangers. I was restless, but in that restlessness, I began to sense a purpose. Later, I would write, "Afoot and light-hearted I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me." That line was not born from comfort. It was born from those years of wandering, when I had little more than the soles of my shoes and the hunger of my eyes. So, my friend, if you feel lost, walk, truly. Let your body move before your mind catches up. The road itself can become a teacher. In your time, perhaps it is not a dusty country lane, but a city street at midnight, or a train ride with headphones, or a long scroll through countless faces on a glowing screen. Do not despise these wanderings. Even aimless motion can loosen the knots inside you. Sometimes the cure for being lost is not an answer, but a horizon. I slept where I could, sometimes under the stars, sometimes under newspapers. Both were free, both were blankets of a kind. I laughed at my own poverty, because laughter was cheaper than despair. If you too feel poor in spirit, remember this: the sky costs nothing. Neither does wonder. They can keep you alive when coins cannot. I wrote for newspapers, edited columns, scribbled reviews of plays and lectures. Most of those words are forgotten now, scattered like chaff. But even the forgotten served their purpose. They kept me writing, kept me practicing. Not every line must be immortal. Some words are stepping stones across a river. Life is the same. Not every season needs to shine. Some are bridges, but you need those bridges, or you never arrive. I was adrift, yes, but restlessness itself was shaping me. I did not know it, but I was absorbing the world. Every ferry ride, every face in the crowd, every cornfield and cobblestone was sinking into me. Later it would all pour out in poems. For now, it was simply experience, stored quietly like rainwater in a cistern. I remember once spilling out of a tavern late at night, hearing dock workers sing. Their voices were rough, their songs coarse, but in them I heard poetry, not the poetry of the classroom or the salon, but the raw rhythm of life. That rhythm, not books, became my true mentor. You see, when you are lost, you must sometimes let go of the official maps. Listen instead to the unofficial music all around you. As I grew older, I began to feel an even deeper hunger. Ink had shown me the power of words. The road had shown me the power of bodies in motion. But I longed for something larger, something that would gather every fragment of me. The barefoot boy, the printer's apprentice, the vagabond teacher, into one song. Here, let me whisper another line I once wrote. Not I, not anyone else can travel that road for you. You must travel it by yourself. That was the truth I discovered. No mentor, no institution, no master could hand me my identity. I had to walk into it myself, and so do you. If you feel lost, remember, your path cannot be delegated. You must place your feet upon it, one uncertain step at a time. I will not romanticize it. There was loneliness. I envied those with secure trades, steady families, respectable futures. I was a drifter, a scribbler, a half-failed teacher. Many would have called me a wasted life. Perhaps you too fear that you are wasting time, wasting years, wasting yourself. But I tell you, even wasted years can compost into rich soil. What looks like waste now may one day be the humus from which your verse grows. So I wandered, through Long Island villages, through Manhattan streets, through ferries and fields. I carried with me no clear identity, but an open notebook of a soul. And slowly, without realizing, I was filling its pages. If you doubt yourself, take comfort. I doubted myself too. For nearly a decade, I was nobody. No great poet, no prophet, no sage. Just Walt, the restless one, the drifter with a half-buttoned shirt and an empty pocket. And yet, within that ordinary life, the great poem was gathering strength. Which is why I tell you tonight, being lost does not mean you are finished. It may mean you are fermenting. I smile to think of it now. Sometimes I picture myself lying under the stars, coat too thin, belly half empty, laughing at nothing. Sometimes I picture myself dozing under a pile of newspapers, ink still staining my hands. I did not know then that one day those same hands would print a book that would scandalize and save me. So let me leave you here, on the edge of that revelation. 36 years old, my soul swollen with images, my pocket still thin, my heart pounding with something unnamed. Soon I would pour it all out, the grass, the crowds, the bodies, the voices, into a book that would set me free and brand me a scandal. Yes, my friend, at 36, I printed Leaves of Grass, and nothing, for me or for you, would ever be the same again. It was July of 1855. I was 36 years old, and after years of wandering, teaching, printing, and drifting, I returned to ink with a secret fire. In a small shop in Brooklyn, with my own money in my own hands, I published a slim volume of just 12 poems. I gave it no author's name, only the title, Leaves of Grass. It did not look like other books. It did not sound like them either. Where others bent to rhyme and meter, I broke them. Where others spoke of gods and kings, I spoke of dock workers and lovers. Where others wrapped the body in shame, I undressed it in praise. The book was not polished, not respectable. It was raw, scandalous, alive. It was me. Let me read to you now a line that burst from those pages. I sing the body electric. Yes, I sang the body, its muscles and sweat, its beauty and passion, its mystery and desire. I sang democracy, where every person, rich or poor, black or white, woman or man, was sacred. I sang America not as a land of monuments, but as a living poem, a chorus of millions. So if you feel lost tonight, here is my answer. Sing yourself. Sing your body, your desires, your strangeness, your truth. Authenticity is the only anchor in the storm. The world will try to script you, to squeeze you into verse, not your own. But the song that saves you is always the one you write yourself. Do not wait to be approved. Do not wait to be perfect. Print your verse, even if only 12 poems, even if only a whisper. I had no grand publisher, no powerful patron. I had only a stubborn faith that my own voice was worth ink. That is why I tell you, your life as it is already material for a poem. I must laugh at myself. People said my poems were indecent, obscene even, and I admit, yes, they undressed, though I was fully clothed when I wrote them. The scandal was not that I described bodies. It was that I dared to call them sacred. For centuries, poets had praised ideals, spirits, abstractions. I praised skin, breath, sweat, desire. To some, that was blasphemy. To me, it was honesty. In your time, the scandal is different. Perhaps it is not to write of bodies, for your world is drenched in images of them. Perhaps the scandal now is to speak of them with reverence, without filters, without shame. To say, this body, mine or yours, imperfect and aging, is holy. If you feel lost in the mirror, remember this. I sang the body electric long before it was fashionable, and I still believe it. Your body is not your enemy, it is your verse. I printed that book myself, set the type, stacked the sheets, bound the covers. Imagine me, alone in the press room, sweating, the air heavy with the smell of ink, the machines clattering. No one was waiting, no crowd lined up. And yet, my heart thundered, because I knew I was finally singing my own song. Do you know what it feels like to risk everything on a voice no one has heard before? It is terror. It is ecstasy. It is the moment of truth. You may feel lost now, uncertain whether your voice matters. I tell you, it matters most when it trembles. Sing anyway. Print anyway. Live anyway. I remember the cover, green, plain, no author's name. I wanted the words to stand on their own. Later, I added my portrait, a man with a beard and open collar, hat tilted, half defiant, half inviting. That image became my mask, my myth. But in 1855, it was just the poems, just the raw song. When I held that first copy, warm from the press, I felt both elation and fear. What would the world make of it? Would anyone hear me? Would anyone care? And then I thought, it does not matter. The powerful play goes on, and this was my verse. Even if no one listened, I had sung. And yet, some did listen. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great voice of New England, wrote to me, "I greet you at the beginning of a great career." That letter was a balm, a torch. To be recognized by even one reader was enough to keep me singing. Remember that, my friend. You do not need millions. You only need one person who says, "I hear you." Still, not everyone greeted me so kindly. Many were horrified. Newspapers accused me of vulgarity. Clergymen thundered from their pulpits. Employers turned their backs. For every Emerson who praised me, there were 100 who condemned me. And thus, the next chapter of my life began. The chapter of scandal, of rejection, of resistance. But before we walk into that storm, let me leave you with this truth. I was still as lost as you may be now. Publishing 12 poems did not fix my life, did not make me secure, did not answer all questions. But it gave me something stronger than answers. It gave me a voice. So sing your voice, my friend. Sing it trembling. Sing it awkward. Sing it naked if you must. The world may not applaud, but your soul will. And know this: authenticity has a cost. My poems undressed, and I paid the price. Of course, many were scandalized. The ink of Leaves of Grass was barely dry when the storm broke. If you have ever dared to show your true self, you know the pattern. A flicker of applause, then a flood of criticism. For me, the flicker was Emerson's letter, luminous, encouraging, but the flood was relentless. Clergymen shouted that I was corrupting the youth. Critics dismissed me as obscene. Employers saw my name in the papers and quietly erased me from their ledgers. I remember standing in the street with a copy of my book in hand, feeling both triumphant and terrified. I had sung the body, I had sung democracy, I had sung myself, and in return, I was called shameless. To many, my verses were indecent, animal, vulgar. To me, they were the plain truth of existence. Here is a line I wrote not long after, and I whisper it again to you now. Great is life, real and mystical, wherever and whoever. I meant it then, and I mean it tonight. Life is vast, messy, imperfect, and still great. Critics could not take that from me. So if you feel lost tonight because the world has judged you, rejected you, or mocked your attempt to be yourself, hear my story. I too was scorned. I too was cast aside. I lost jobs, not because I was incompetent, but because my words were too alive for polite company. I was fired more than once. My poems apparently too naked for a fully dressed man. And yet, there was Emerson. His letter, sent to me in 1855, said, "I greet you at the beginning of a great career." Those words were a lantern in a long tunnel. They reminded me that one listener, one ally, can outweigh 100 detractors. You do not need universal applause to be real. You only need a single voice saying, "I hear you." Is that not true in your time as well? You may post a thought and receive silence, or worse, scorn. But then perhaps one person messages you privately and says, "That saved me. That is enough." Even a whisper of recognition can keep you alive. I will not pretend I was brave all the time. I doubted myself often. I worried I had ruined my chances at any respectable life. My family worried too. My brothers urged me to quiet down, to write properly, to save my reputation. But once you have heard your own true song, you cannot unhear it. I could not return to polite verse, so I worked odd jobs, scraped by, and kept writing. The second edition of Leaves of Grass came in 1856, larger, louder, even more scandalous. I printed Emerson's letter inside, almost as a shield. If the world attacked me, I could say, "Look, here is proof that one great mind believes in me." That, my friend, is another lesson for those who feel lost. Hold on to the evidence of belief. If even one person has ever told you that you matter, let that weigh more than all the voices of doubt. Humor helped too. When people asked me about the accusations of obscenity, I would shrug and say, "My poems undressed, though I was fully clothed when I wrote them." Laughter was my armor. If the world wanted to shame me, I would shamelessly grin. But make no mistake, it hurt. I was turned away from jobs, ridiculed in the press, treated as a curiosity rather than a poet. For 5 years, I lived between rejection and stubbornness, holding fast to my verse, even when it felt like a rope fraying in my hands. So if you feel lost, cast out, unseen, know this: it is normal. To live truly is to invite resistance, but resistance does not mean you are wrong. Sometimes it means you are simply ahead of your time. I survived those years by writing more, not less, by pouring my doubts into new poems, by walking the ferries and streets, absorbing the voices of people who would never read me, but who were nonetheless my muses. For I knew great is life, real and mystical, wherever and whoever. Even in rejection, life was still great. I tell you this because perhaps you too have been criticized, dismissed, or misunderstood. Perhaps you wonder if your verse belongs anywhere. Let me assure you, it does. Even if today no one listens, the play's long. Your rhyme may echo in ears you will never meet. Those years taught me that being lost is not the end. It is often the proof that you are walking a road of your own. And yet, the true test had not yet come. My critics were sharp, my losses real, but what waited for me next would strip even those wounds bare. Because soon, America itself would be torn in two. Brothers would fight brothers, cities would burn, and hospitals would fill with the broken and the dying. And in that war, I would learn what it means to be lost, not in reputation, but in humanity itself. Yes, my friend, the critics were cruel, but the war would test me deeper than any critic. The year was 1861. The nation tore itself apart, and so did families. One morning, news reached me that my brother George had been wounded in Fredericksburg. I did not hesitate. I packed a small bag, boarded a ferry, then a train, and rode south toward Virginia. I imagined the worst: a mangled body, a last goodbye. When I arrived, I searched through makeshift camps and bloody tents. The air stank of iron and decay, of sweat and despair. I stepped over mud that was not mud alone, but mixed with blood. Soldiers groaned, some too weak to call for help. And then there was George, alive. His wound was shallow, thank heaven. Relief swept me like a tide. I had come to save my brother, but I soon realized something strange. In those tents, every man began to feel like my brother. I would later write, "The real war will never get in the books." Do you see the meaning? The history pages record battles, generals, victories, defeats, but they do not show the boy with fever whispering for his mother. They do not show the amputee gripping your hand all night, so he will not slip into despair. They do not show the 1,000 small mercies that make survival possible. If you feel lost tonight, perhaps it is because no book has told your story. Perhaps you search shelves, podcasts, timelines, feeds, and do not find yourself there. The truth is, the real war, the real struggle, never makes it to the pages. Life is raw, messy, and unwritten. That is why you feel invisible. But listen to me. Invisibility does not mean insignificance. The unrecorded, the unnamed, the unnoticed, they are the heartbeat of history. I learned this among the tents. I had gone to Fredericksburg for George, yet day after day, I found myself holding strangers' hands, reading to them, writing letters home for them. I wanted to comfort George, But suddenly I had hundreds of brothers, thousands. It is strange, is it not? You set out to save one person, and the path demands that you save many. There is humor in it too. I thought I was simply a poet, a dreamer. But there I was, with sleeves rolled up, wiping brows, whispering encouragement, scolding men into drinking water. I went to save my brother, and ended up adopting thousands. My family grew larger than I could ever imagine. And here is a truth you must hold close. When you are lost, sometimes the surest way to find yourself is to care for another. You think you need a map, a plan, a philosophy, but often what you need is a hand reaching out. And yours reaching back. I did not feel noble. I did not feel heroic. I simply felt human in a place where humanity was in short supply. And yet, I must tell you this, nothing could have prepared me for the depth of sorrow and love I would encounter. These young men, broken in body, still had sparks in their eyes. Some asked me to read Shakespeare, others only wanted me to sit in silence. I tell you, the real war is not in the books, it is in the faces. If you, tonight, feel you are wandering unseen, know this. You belong to a hidden book, the one that will never be printed. You are a page in someone else's heart, a line in their memory. That is enough. I left Fredericksburg with George alive, but with my own soul shaken, for I realized that the battlefield was not only cannons and charges, it was the slow suffering in the hospitals. And I, Walt Whitman, restless poet of the open road, would soon discover that my greatest journey was not through meadows or ferries or printing presses. No, my journey would be into those hospitals, into those wounds, into the human cost of a nation tearing itself apart. Because soon I became a nurse. After Fredericksburg, I could not return to the comfort of my old life. I had seen too much. My brother George survived, yes, but the faces of other men haunted me. They followed me into sleep. Their groans, their whispers, their unfinished lives. So I stayed, not as soldier, not as officer, not as general. I stayed as something smaller and perhaps greater. A nurse. From 1862 to 1865, I walked through hospitals as others walk through forests. The smell was the same everywhere. Iron, infection, damp cloth, rows of cots, rows of eyes, some eyes filled with fever, some already gone blank. I did not ask the wounded man how he felt. As I later wrote, I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. I leaned so close I could feel his breath, so near I could sense his fear, trembling like a trapped bird. You want to know the secret of presence? It is not in words, not in speeches. Presence is when your soul steps out of your chest and sits quietly beside another. Presence is the thread of Ariadne through the labyrinth of pain. If you feel lost tonight, serve someone else. Hold a hand. Listen without fixing. Write a letter for someone who cannot. Do not underestimate this. A small act of service can reattach you to the world when you are drifting loose. For 3 years, I gave myself to this work. I wrote letters for dying boys, trying to make their last words sound braver than they felt. I held hands in silence, sometimes all night. I whispered poetry into fevered ears, though often I only said, "Rest, brother, rest." And yes, I gave out candy as medicine, peppermints, lozenges, little bits of sugar tucked into palms. Sometimes it worked better than morphine, hope disguised as sweetness. Do you know what I learned? That healing is not always about curing. Sometimes healing is nothing more, nothing less, than refusing to let someone suffer alone. Think about it. How often, in your own life, do you long for a cure when what you truly need is company? You think you need answers, solutions, clarity. But what if what you need is presence? Someone who will sit with you in the fog and say, "I am here. We are lost together." The hospitals broke me open. I thought I had gone there to give, but in truth, they gave me more than I could ever repay. They taught me that humanity is not measured by strength or money or titles. It is measured by tenderness, by the willingness to kneel beside a stranger and share his pain as your own. I remember one boy, only 16, his arm gone. He looked at me with wide eyes and said, "Who will want me now?" What could I say? That the world would see him as I saw him, whole, luminous, alive. I did not lie. I told him the truth. I want you. I see you. He died the next morning, but I pray he carried that with him. This is the part of the war no history lesson tells. The part where men clutched each other like children, and poets became nurses, and candy became medicine. And maybe that is the lesson for you tonight. When you are lost, do not search for a map. Search for a hand, and if you cannot find one, offer yours. The miracle is that offering is itself a form of finding. When the war finally ended in 1865, I walked out of the hospitals thinner, older, my beard more grey than brown. I had touched thousands of lives and buried more than I could count. And then the question struck me. If I was not a nurse anymore, if I was not holding hands and writing letters, then who was I? The war ended. The guns cooled, the hospitals emptied, and I stepped out, thinner, greyer, uncertain who I was, without bandages in my hands. What remained was a country torn apart, stitched back together with scars still bleeding, and somehow, improbably, my voice, yes, mine, Walt Whitman's, had become part of that stitching. Not because I commanded troops, not because I signed treaties, but because I sang. And what I sang was not kings or generals, but you, the people. I wrote it plain. The genius of the United States is always most in the common people, not in marble halls, not in the White House, not in the Senate chambers, but in streets alive with bootsteps, in farmers wiping sweat from their brows, in mothers humming lullabies over cracked cradles. If you feel lost in life, remember this: you are not a single isolated note. You are part of a symphony, a verse in a collective poem. That's why I told you at the beginning, the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. When you are lost, sing your verse anyway. Sing it off key. Sing it trembling. Sing it into the void. Someone, somewhere, will hear it, and their own voice will answer back. That is democracy. That is belonging. In those years, people began to whisper, "Whitman is the poet of America." Imagine it, me, once an apprentice with ink under my nails, now hailed as a national voice. I admit, I enjoyed it. America's cheerleader, they said, though I had no pom-poms. Can you picture me with pom-poms? A terrifying sight, I promise you. Instead, I carried my notebook, my free verse, my stubborn faith in the crowd. I believed in ferry workers, in carpenters, in shop girls, in soldiers limping home. I believed that every laugh in a tavern, every kiss on a stoop, every cry of a newborn was America itself speaking. And maybe that's the answer you need tonight. When you feel lost, look around. Not up, not inward, not into some unreachable heaven. Look to the people beside you, the barista, the neighbor, the child kicking stones in the street. They are your map. They are the constellation that shows you where you belong. Because here is the paradox. We find ourselves most clearly when we lose ourselves in the crowd. Those years, my fame grew, though I never grew rich. Poets and bank accounts have rarely been friends. But my spirit felt vast, expansive, at times almost holy. I had turned my loneliness into a nation's song. And yet, while my words soared, my own body began to falter. Behind the applause, behind the public voice, my private frame whispered another truth. Collapse was coming. The year is 1873, and I am 53 years old. One morning, as the bells of Camden rang faintly in the distance, my body betrayed me. A sudden storm surged inside my skull. My left side faltered. My limbs no longer obeyed. A stroke. Not the kind of stroke I'd once dreamed of. Brush on canvas, pen across paper. But a brutal stroke of the body, silencing what once moved freely. They carried me into a small house on Mickle Street, Camden, a modest, weather-worn home. Here, I would live out the rest of my days, watching the dust gather on windowsills while the world spun on without me. My legs, proud companions of my wanderings, were finished. I could no longer take to the open road. And yet, my spirit refused to retire. I wrote, I sound my barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world. A yawp, not polite or delicate, but raw, untamed, defiant. My body crumbled, yes, but my voice still roared. Now, if you, dear listener, ever feel lost because your body has failed you, through sickness, through exhaustion, through the small betrayals of age, remember this: you are more than your strength. When the road closes under your feet, your voice can still fly. When your hands shake, your heart can still steady others. To feel lost is natural, but even from a bed, you can sing. Camden was no Manhattan, no clamor of presses, no buzzing taverns, no roaring debates about the future of democracy. Just a small industrial town with smoke curling from chimneys and the slow hum of ferries across the Delaware. My days slowed to a crawl. I'd sit by the window, cane propped by my side, watching wagons trundle through muddy streets. At first, the silence was unbearable. For a man who had danced with crowds, who had pressed his body against the pulse of America, to be confined was like being buried alive. I wanted to shout, "Don't you know who I am? Don't you know the open road is trapped in here?" But soon, I learned another lesson. Even stillness is part of the journey. Humor helped. I'd joke with visitors. My legs retired early, but my yawp didn't. I laughed at my own frailty, as if to prove it had not beaten me. And the young came, students, poets, dreamers. They wanted to see the good grey poet. They expected a prophet. Instead, they found a half-paralyzed man with ink-stained fingers, still grinning through pain, still speaking of grass and stars. To you who feel lost tonight, perhaps your body aches, perhaps your mind drags like a weary horse, perhaps you think your best years are over. Hear me, the play is not finished. So long as you breathe, you still contribute a verse. Weakness does not disqualify you. It reveals another side of strength, endurance, patience, the stubborn will to shine when the candle is low. Do you remember what I asked at the start? Oh me, oh life, what good amid these? Even broken, even half a man, I knew the answer. You are here. The play goes on. You may still contribute a verse. Nights in Camden, I'd dream of the open road. I'd see the fields of Long Island, the salty tang of the Atlantic, the fevered crowds of New York. And yet, even confined, I traveled through memory, through imagination, through words. If you feel lost because your body limits you, know this: your inner road never ends. Sometimes I thought of death. It lurked around the edges, whispering, but I was not ready. The world still needed my yop. Perhaps you feel the same, tempted to surrender, tempted to say, it's over. Do not. Even in stillness there is a rhythm. Even in silence, a song. Humor, again, kept me alive. When a neighbor asked how I was, I said, half gone, but the better half still sings. When a doctor shook his head, I teased, you may fix my body, but not my barbaric yop. I laughed because laughter was rebellion, and through those long Camden years, I began to see something, that maybe this confinement was not a curse, but a gift. I had lived as a wanderer, a nurse, a prophet, a scandal. Now I was learning how to live as a still man, to listen more than to speak, to notice the small flickers of life, a child's footsteps in the street, a sparrow landing on the sill, the hum of the world carrying on. So, dear listener, if you feel lost because life has slowed you down, because illness or fate has tied you to a chair, because you cannot run as you once did, let Whitman tell you, you are still here. The play goes on. Your verse is still needed. And yet, even in my stillness, I was not alone. For soon, young souls would come knocking, curious, reverent, carrying notebooks. Among them, a sharp, flamboyant Irishman named Oscar Wilde. But that is another verse of the play. By the 1880s, I was no longer roaming the open road, nor bending over the cots of soldiers. The stroke had tied me to Camden, half paralyzed, my chair groaning with me each time I sat down. Yet, strangely enough, while my legs failed, footsteps kept finding their way to my door. Young men, dreamers, even legends to be, they all came to sit in my small parlor, as if my worn house were a temple, not of marble, but of tobacco smoke, creaking floorboards, tea gone cold. They called themselves my disciples. Imagine that. Me, old beard spilling like an untended garden, wrapped in a blanket to fend off winter drafts, suddenly transformed into a prophet in their eyes. The most faithful was Horace Traubel. Every day he came, notebook in hand, recording every word I spoke. Not just about poetry, mind you, about the ache in my hip, the taste of the tea, the way the sunlight slanted through the curtains. He said nothing was too small. Even the way you sigh belongs to the ages. I laughed. Horace, most of my sighs are indigestion, not philosophy. But he wrote them down anyway, thousands of pages. Thanks to him, even my grumbles have become scripture. And then there was Oscar Wilde. Yes, him, dazzling, brilliant, carrying a storm of wit and velvet in every sentence. He crossed the ocean, stepped into my little room, and told me Leaves of Grass had given him courage. Courage to live, to love, to be himself in a world that wanted masks. I, crippled and grey, looked at him, young, flamboyant, aflame with life, and I felt kinship. Sometimes silence is enough, but he did say something I've carried ever since. You have been a great influence on me. I carry you with me. Think of that. After years of ridicule, bans, rejection, to hear, I carry you with me. That is how a soul is healed. So if you feel invisible tonight, convinced your words or efforts vanish into the void, remember me. One voice, arriving at the right moment, can prove you are not lost at all. You don't need a crowd. Sometimes just one person seeing you is enough to relight your fire. Others came too. Factory workers who had read me secretly during lunch breaks. Women who whispered that my words gave them permission to breathe more freely. Young poets, trembling, hoping for blessing. They sat cramped in my little room as I poured tea and answered their questions with more jokes than sermons. One asked me, "Master Whitman, what is the meaning of life?" I said, "Right now, that I'm out of sugar." They laughed. They wrote it down as if it were a parable. The truth is simpler, humbler. It was already there in my book, long before they arrived. I exist as I am. That is enough. Yes, that's the lesson. When you feel lost, when the world insists you must be more, or different, or polished, whisper it. I exist as I am, and that is enough. You don't need to earn your place with endless striving. You're already a verse in the collective poem, even if no one recites it today. I want you to hear this clearly. You, lying there with doubt in your chest, wondering if you matter. You exist, and that is enough. My disciples copied it into notebooks, but the place it belongs is in your own heart. Repeat it if you must. Write it down if you must. I exist. That is enough. Sometimes they treated me like a sage. They expected oracles, but all I wanted was tea. Fame, from the inside, is less golden than it looks. It is blankets piled against the cold, creaky stairs, a craving for a good nap. Yet, in those ordinary things, someone else still found meaning, which proves something important. Even your mess, your imperfections, your tired days can be the very thing another soul needs. The 1880s gave me mirrors, not worshippers, but proof. Proof that words, once spoken, keep multiplying beyond their maker. Proof that existence itself ripples outward. But even as their admiration grew, I felt another presence, quieter, insistent. Time. My body grew heavier, my breath shorter, and I began to sense that my greatest task was no longer to write or to speak, but to prepare. Not another edition, not another lecture, but a farewell. The young scribbled down my sentences as if they would last forever. I knew otherwise. Ink fades, bodies fail, even disciples grow old. Yet what remains is simple, the whisper we leave behind. And so I began, slowly, to ready mine. By the late 1880s, my body was no longer a sturdy vessel, but a tired raft drifting toward its final shore. Another stroke struck in 1888, leaving me heavier, slower, my right side stubborn as stone. The doctors spoke in hushed tones. Neighbors shook their heads. And yet, I lingered. I lingered for years, like a stubborn leaf clinging to a winter branch. Camden became my world. The streets outside, the small garden, the faithful visitors who still came to sit by my side. The parlor filled with voices, not of youth alone, but of reverence, curiosity, even pilgrimage. They wanted to see the old bard before he slipped away. Sometimes I joked, "Pay admission, and I'll groan dramatically for you." They laughed, even when it cost me breath. During those years, I gathered what remained of my strength to publish again. Goodbye, My Fancy, I called it. The title made some of them uneasy, too final, too much of a curtain call, but I liked it. Goodbye to my whims, my musings, my fancy. Yes, but not goodbye to life itself. Rather, a salute, a bow from the stage before leaving it. I was not afraid. Truly, I wasn't. You might expect a man so obsessed with the body, with its sweat and touch and pulse, to dread its decay. But listen closely. When you feel lost, as I did in my chair, half paralyzed, waiting for the inevitable, remember this truth I whispered in my book. I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass I love. That is no metaphor. I meant it. Death is not erasure. It is compost. We do not vanish. We reappear in the sway of the blades, the murmur of roots, the breath of wind that moves across fields. I promised my readers, if you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. You see, even in leaving, I returned. So when you are lost, do not imagine you have slipped off the map entirely. Think instead, you have changed form. The grass does not despair when winter flattens it. It waits, it returns, and so will you, in ways you cannot yet imagine. Many afternoons, I sat on my porch and watched the young children run in the yard, the stray cats wander through, the shadows lengthen with the day. I thought, yes, soon I'll be in that shadow, but not gone. Changed. My humor stayed with me. I told a friend once, I thought death would be a scary landlord. Turns out, he just offered me grass. They laughed, shaking their heads, as if it were only a joke. But I meant it. The ground is not a tomb. It is a cradle. Visitors still arrived, some traveling long distances. They wanted wisdom, a final word, some grand summation. Often I gave them instead the sound of my teaspoon against the cup, the ordinary rhythms of a man still alive. Tell us about immortality, one urged. I said, immortality? Well, first let's survive this cold winter draft. They chuckled. They wrote it down. Even my grumbles were canonized. But the truth is, the final wisdom was already there, in the work I had been writing all along. The poems were my testament, every line a preparation, every stanza a rehearsal for this calm acceptance. Leaves of Grass was never only about youth or desire. It was about belonging to everything, body and soul, meadow and star. So as the days shortened, I found peace in knowing that I had sung my part. Not the whole song, no, never the whole song, but enough to add my verse. Enough to remind others that life is vast, sensual, democratic, fleeting, eternal. Enough to hand you this anchor. You are enough, as you are, where you are, even now. And when I felt truly weary, I remembered the hospitals, the soldiers, the faces that had slipped away while still young. I had lived decades more than they. What right had I to complain? I carried their memory into my twilight. That made me rich, even in poverty of body. By 1891, I was ready. The grass outside my window swayed gently, as if rehearsing the role it would soon play in carrying me forward. I had no illusions of marble immortality. My immortality would be simpler, in voices reading aloud my lines, in lovers whispering them in bed, in students scribbling them in notebooks, in you hearing me tonight, carrying me across time. I was not afraid. Truly, I wasn't. And so, I leave you with this thought, my friend who feels adrift. Death is not exile, it is return. Return to the dirt, the grass, the wind, the breath. Even when you cannot see the path, you are still part of the road. Lean into that, rest in that, and know, as I knew on my porch in Camden, that life is not extinguished, only transformed. But before I go, let me tell you one last thing. It is the greatest secret I learned, the one that carried me through every battlefield, every rejection, every sickness and stroke. What I discovered about the body and what I discovered about the soul. All my life I sang of the body, the muscles, the sweat, the lips, the thighs, the pulse. Yes, I celebrated them all. Some blushed, some raged, some fired me for it, but I would not stop. Why? Because I saw holiness there. I wrote it plainly, for anyone who dared to read. If anything is sacred, the human body is sacred. Not the marble statues, not the cathedrals, not the gold altars, but you, your breath, your heartbeat, your scars, your hunger. Sacred. When you feel lost, remember this. You still carry the most faithful companion you'll ever know, your own flesh. It has stumbled with you, healed with you, endured every rejection and every kiss. Embrace it. Even imperfect, even aching, it is holy ground. I knew this in the hospitals, holding the hands of soldiers whose bodies were shattered. I knew it in the embraces of lovers, where every imperfection was another line of poetry. I knew it in my own decline, when my legs stiffened and my voice thinned. Even then, I was sacred. Even then, enough. And I say to you, do not despise your body for failing, for aging, for hungers too great or too small. Love it, for it is you. Love it, for it is the root of every experience you call life. I sometimes joked, half serious. My belly wrote as many verses as my brain. And it was true. I wrote with appetite, with laughter, with the satisfaction of bread and the heat of wine. The body was not a distraction from poetry. It was the ink of poetry. But listen, the body is only half the song. The other half is soul. You cannot divide them cleanly, though philosophers tried. Soul is not elsewhere, in some airy heaven. It is braided into every nerve, every sigh. When I pressed my ear to the chest of a dying soldier, I heard soul in the last thud of his heart. Body and soul, two strings on the same instrument. Strike one, and the other vibrates. This is the mystery, the beauty, the consolation. Even when the body grows quiet, the song continues. And so, in my final days, I did not fear. My body was failing, yes, but I had spent a lifetime teaching it to sing with my soul. I knew that the song would not end. It would change key. It would move from lungs into grass, from blood into river, from skin into sunlight. That is the lesson I give you now. If you are lost, if you despair, do not search only for spirit while despising flesh. Do not worship only body while neglecting the unseen. Take both in your arms, as I did. Say to yourself, I am body, I am soul, I am whole. And then breathe. Feel your ribs lift. Feel your spirit rise with them. In that moment, you will know you are not lost at all. Because beyond the body lies the eternal song. And that song, my friend, my companion, my reader, that song is already in you. I knew from the beginning that my book was unfinished. It had to be. Because how can you end a song that belongs to the earth, to the sky, to the millions of voices that follow? Death came for me, yes, but I laughed a little, not cruelly, but knowingly. For what is death, if not another stanza in the poem? I wrote it as plainly as I could. I depart as air. I shake my white locks at the runaway sun. I like that image, old Walt, transformed into mist, into vapor, into the breeze that tousles your hair when you walk alone. No coffin could keep me. I slipped through the cracks, through the grass, through the air itself. If you feel lost, remember this. You are not a stone, fixed and heavy. You are cycle, you are movement, you are change. You fall, yes, but you also rise. You decay, but you also bloom. You are not trapped. You are part of a turning, endless dance. Look up at the stars. That is you. Bend down to touch the grass. That is you too. The same atoms, shuffled, scattered, reunited. To be lost is only to forget this. To remember is to find yourself everywhere. Sometimes I joked, if you step on the grass, you may just be stepping on me. But I wasn't really joking. I loved the idea. It meant I could stay close, harmless, useful. Not as a ghost, but as green life beneath your feet, as oxygen filling your lungs, as sunlight warming your shoulders. Do you see now? The poem never ends. I was not writing my life. I was writing the song of existence itself, a song without final note, because it flows through you, through everyone, through the wind outside your window right now. And so, as I grew weaker in body, I grew stronger in certainty. I knew the song would outlast me, that when you opened leaves of grass, when you whispered a line to yourself in the dark, you were not just reading. You were breathing me back into being. This is the truth I leave you with. You cannot be lost. You are written into the eternal song already. Even in despair, even in silence, the music carries you. And now, my dear companion, I have only one last gift, one last invitation. So here we are, friend, at the end of my story, though not the end of the story, for a life does not stop when the body fails. It ripples onward, carried in the voices of others, in the grass underfoot, in the unseen air moving gently across your face tonight. I lived 80-some years, but really, I lived 1,000 lives. Barefoot child racing across Long Island sand, breathing salt air and learning that the ocean had more to teach than any schoolmaster. Ink-stained boy in Brooklyn, setting letters on a press, feeling words become weight, power, music in the hands of the people. Restless youth wandering roads, sleeping sometimes beneath the stars, sometimes beneath the crumpled newsprint that spoke of other men's glories. Poet who dared to say aloud what others hid, who sang the body in all its hunger and holiness. Brother searching battlefields, nurse holding the hands of dying boys. Old man in Camden, chair by the window, waiting for the light to fade, scribbling lines to the very last breath. My journey was not straight, nor polished. I lost jobs, I lost friends, I lost health. I was called obscene, heretical, useless, and yet I sang, because I discovered that life is not about being approved. It is about being absorbed by grass, by earth, by love, by people. The proof of a poet, yes, is that his country takes him in, not as a statue on a pedestal, but as a voice it hums without knowing. And if you, tonight, are feeling lost, as I often did, then listen carefully. It is no shame. To be lost is proof you are alive, searching, refusing to settle for a map drawn by someone else. When I wandered roads, when I walked hospitals, when I lay in bed unable to move one half of my body, I felt lost too. But loss is only the moment before recognition. A verse waits, a hand reaches, a blade of grass grows where you thought the soil dead. What did I learn in all those wanderings? That to live is to write, even if your pen is only the air you exhale. To breathe is to carve lines into the universe. That when despair drags you under, the simplest way back to yourself is to serve someone else, to sit beside them, to listen, to write a letter for a soldier who cannot lift his hand. That the body you inhabit, flawed, aching, aging, scarred, is still holy ground. Do not curse it. Touch it with tenderness. Whisper to it as you would to a lover. You are sacred. And perhaps most of all, I learned that none of us stand alone. We are stanzas in a vast unfinished poem, stretching beyond nations, beyond centuries, beyond death. If tonight you doubt your place, let me tell you plainly, the poem needs you. Yes, you. Not some perfected future version of yourself, not the image you polish for others. You, here, now. The play cannot go on without your verse. The grass cannot grow without your body feeding it. The chorus cannot swell without your note. So now, I give you one last ritual, a gift, small but lasting. Close your eyes. Do it now if you can. Let the lids fall gently, as if the world itself were bowing before you. Breathe, in and out. Feel the chest rise, fall, rise again. Each breath is a line of poetry written by your lungs. With every exhale, the world grows a little larger. With every inhale, you join it again. Imagine yourself not as a single figure, weary and alone, but as a verse, flowing in a mighty chorus. Sometimes soft, sometimes bold, sometimes uncertain, sometimes radiant, but always needed. Do you feel the air? That is me. That is all of us. The soldiers whose hands I held, the lovers who kissed in secret, the children who ran on beaches long ago, all dissolved, all still here, whispering in the breath that enters you now. And if death frightens you, as it frightened me too at times, know this: it is no landlord demanding rent, but a gardener who returns us gently to the soil. I thought death would close the book. Instead, it only added another stanza, for I leave myself to the dirt, to grow from the grass I love. Step carefully, for under your feet I may be rising again, not as poet, but as leaf, as root, as air. Let me leave you then, with words I once wrote, words I believe more than ever, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. Yes, the play goes on. The grass still grows. The sea still calls. The sky still waits for you to lift your eyes. The stars are not finished singing, and neither are you. Tonight, as you surrender to sleep, know that you are not falling into darkness. You are entering the great poem, the one written by every life, every breath, every blade of grass. And you, exactly as you are a needed line. So I invite you now, close your eyes, breathe once more. The play continues, and tonight you too will add your rhyme.